So tell me, Peter, we're here at the first LGBT History Month festival. How important do you feel it is that these events take place?
It's really important that the LGBTI community knows its past. To understand where we've come from is tremendously important because it informs who we are, how we see ourselves, and of course gives us clues as to where we're going. So history is not something for academia, it's not something for the past, it's also for the present, to empower us with knowledge and understanding.
We went out and we asked some members of the LGBT community if they knew if it was Lesbian and Gay History Month, and they said no. So what do you think could be done to promote better awareness within our own communities about this?
I think it's quite worrying and depressing that so many LGBTI people don't know about LGBTI History Month and don't know their own history. Some people, particularly younger people, seem to think it's more or less always been like this and don't realize the struggles we've been through to overturn discrimination and to secure acceptance and equality. So history is really, really important. And we know from Black History Month how important it is in terms of giving people a sense of self-worth. To have that pride in who you are, to not feel bad about yourself, part of that process is giving you a sense of what has been done before and how we've got from there to here.
You alluded to this in your talk around the disinterest in the media really kind of covering lesbian and gay history, the events that took place in the concentration camps. So how important do you think it is that lesbian and gay media outlets play a role in documenting these events, recording at these events, and basically making sure that they're made available to communities?
I think the media has a very important role in documenting not just LGBTI history, but the history of women, of black and ethnic minority people, of disabled people, of all the marginal groups that have traditionally been excluded from the mainstream, who have traditionally been written out of history or hidden from history. So that role of the media is really, really important. Now it's got better, much better than it once was, but still more needs to be done. There's always room for improvement. Until every young person in this country, LGBTI and straight, knows and understands LGBTI history, our work will not be done. Consciousness raising is a precondition for anything and everything. I can remember in the early days of the Gay Liberation Front in London in the 1970s, say 71, 72, most gay people did not know their own history. And it was us amateurs who began to recover it, partly by word of mouth from older people who could tell the stories of what happened in the 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, and partly by going to libraries and museums and trawling through and discovering that the only thing that was there was just fragments, if anything at all. But from those fragments, many of us were able to find the full story, or at least parts of the story. So it has been a process of a long process, a protracted and quite, difficult process to recover those histories. But thanks to many LGBTI historians and amateurs, we are now in a much more informed place than we were 20 or 30 years ago. Whatever aspect of LGBT history you look at, I think almost without exception, it's never received the proper, just, deserved acknowledgement and documentation. And I think that's one of our community challenges. The older generation, before the partial limited reform of 1967, are rapidly dying out. There's not that many left. And we have to grab that history now in order to make sure it's not lost forever. That's the big danger. We may lose it forever. It's also why it's very important that we ensure that if we have a personal history of involvement in LGBT organizations and campaigning, that we make sure that that personal archive is bequeathed to, the People's History Museum or Lesbian and Gay Foundation or whoever, to make sure that history is not lost, that it can be bequeathed to future generations. Social media has a role and certainly can be a great tool for awareness raising and conscientizing people. But I have a big anxiety. How secure and how permanent is digital media? I think it's probably going to be preserved, but it's not the same as having physical documentation. Copies of the badges, the pamphlets, the letters, the news clippings. That physical evidence is likely to be much more durable than digital versions. And so I think we need both. We do need those stories to be told through social media and digitally recorded, but we also need, audio and video and DVD characterizations as well.
In your talk, you talked about the hormone therapy, and you talked about the Alan Turing case of him being forced to take chemicals to basically castrate him. Do you think the government should make a policy mandate that they will not fund any organisations that either believe or use reparatory therapy for LGBT communities?
Well, that would be a very good symbolic move, and that would be, an important marker. Also, as you know, the main council organisations have said that this is unethical. And indeed, one councillor was struck off for attempting to use this kind of therapy to cure homosexuality. So I think the medical profession and the government is in the right direction, but the additional statement that there would be no government funding would be good, as would a statement just generally critiquing it and making it very clear that all health professionals and counsellors and social workers know that this is an abuse of their power.
So, we have an election coming up, and obviously it's happening in May. What would you like to see policy-wise from the political parties as the next step on LGBTI equality?
Well, the first thing to say is that the next general election in Britain will be, like all others before it, a fraud. We don't have a fair voting system. There is a constant disconnection between the percentage of votes cast for a party and the number of seats won by a party. So, for example, in 2005, Labour won only 35% of the votes, but won 55% of the seats. In 2010, the Liberal Democrats won 23% of the vote, but only 9% of the seats. That kind of disparity is going to be repeated at the next general election. Britain hasn't had a government with majority support for a long, long time. In the case of the last general election in 2010, that was an exception. But still the voting results and the seats won were distorted. So if you look from 1955 to 2005 inclusive, not a single British government had majority popular support. Every single government was a minority one. And that is not democracy. The Chartists and the suffragettes would be outraged at the way in which the voting system prevents a proper representative parliament. So changing the voting system is really crucial to progressive politics. And if we had, a system of proportional representation back in the 1970s, Margaret Thatcher would have never formed the government in 1979 and beyond. So, that's a lesson. That's a lesson because we paid a very heavy price. In terms of LGBTI policies from a future government, one of the big pushes right now is for mandatory and inclusive sex and relationship education. In other words, that sex and relationship education should be compulsory in every school and be inclusive of LGBTI issues. At the moment, it's neither compulsory nor inclusive, automatically and necessarily inclusive of LGBTI issues. Some schools make reference to LGBTI issues, others don't. That quite clearly is unsatisfactory. We still have the anomaly that all our different equality laws have written into them qualified exemptions for religious organisations. So faith schools, hospitals, nursing homes and shelters for the homeless are allowed to discriminate if they can show that it's necessary to preserve their, quote, religious ethos. I don't see why religious organisations should be above the law. There's also the issue of the 12-month deferral period for gay and bisexual blood donors. That is unjustified medically and scientifically. It doesn't need to be 12 months. With certain qualifications, in many instances it could be 1 to 3 months. Then there's the question of the appalling mistreatment of LGBTI refugees fleeing persecution. So many of them are refused, denied asylum, despite the suffering they've been through. And that's because of the homophobic bias of many Home Office caseworkers, barristers, and of course asylum adjudicators. That has got to change as well. There's many other issues as well. We haven't got all day, so just those ones would be a good start, and then we can work on the others.
And one sneaky question for you personally: which political party do you feel has the best LGBT credentials or support for us?
Well, quite clearly UKIP is one of the main parties at fault in terms of its harbouring of candidates and officials who are proudly and outrageously homophobic. UKIP also opposes the ban on same-sex marriage, and it is mirrored by the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, which not only has blocked same-sex marriage, but also blocked the ending of the lifetime ban on gay and bisexual blood donors, and is now pushing forward the new conscience bill, which would allow religious organisations to discriminate. So UKIP and the DUP are definitely anti-LGBTI, and I would be appalled if any person, gay or straight, supported them. The other parties, for the most part, are pretty good nowadays. So Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem, SNP, Plaid Cymru, Sinn Féin, the Alliance, those parties are making very, very positive moves. But I've got to say that the Green Party really does stand out head and shoulders. I mean, all the policies that the big three parties adopted in recent years were adopted by the Greens in the 1980s and 1990s. They've been championing mandatory sex and relationship education inclusive of LGBTI issues for over 20 years. On hate crimes, on trans issues, on refugees fleeing homophobic, biphobic and transphobic persecution. The Greens did all this years and years and years ago. On same-sex marriage, they were the first party to commit to end the ban on same-sex marriage and to also support the right of straight couples to have a civil partnership. So I'm with the Green. I'm a Green Party member for lots of different reasons, but one of them is because they do simply have the the best policies, and the longest, most sustained record.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Pleasure.